Hello and welcome to Mabinda TV. This is home of Compassionate Conservatism, where we advocate for a fine balance, a sweet spot between individual creative genius excellence as supported by capitalism and society excellence as supported by equality of opportunity. So in essence, you are calling for capitalism with a human first, that is capitalism with a human first. So now this is my usual segment. So I usually begin with Bible study. Then I move on to Africa perspectives, then ideas, and finally remaking America. So in the Bible study, I'll be looking at Genesis chapter 41, verse 14 to 21. That is Genesis chapter 41, verse 14 to 21. So Joseph is called to explain the dreams. You remember the story of Joseph. So Pharaoh called Joseph from the prison. The guards quickly got Joseph out of prison. Joseph shaved, put on some clean clothes, and went to see Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream and no one can explain it for me. I heard that you can't explain dream when someone tells you about them. Joseph answered, I cannot, but God can explain the dream for you, Pharaoh. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, in my dream, I was standing by the Nile River. 7 cows came out of the river and stood there eating the grass. They were healthy, good-looking cows. Then I saw 7 more cows come up out of the river after them, but these cows were thin and looked sick. They were the worst cows I had ever seen anywhere in Egypt. The thin-skinned cows are the first healthy cows, but they still looked thin and sick. You couldn't even tell they had eaten the healthy cows. They looked as thin and as sick as they did in the beginning. Then I woke up. So that's the dream of joy. The dream that Pharaoh had about 7 cows, about cows that were healthy, and then the other 7 cows were cows that were sickly. So basically, according to Joseph, so Joseph interpreted these dreams as basically that Joseph interpreted these dreams as basically as there will be 7 years of plentiful harvest, but then after that there will be 7 years of famine. So basically that was the interpretation of the dream, that basically there will be 7 years of plentiful harvest for Egypt and then 7 years of famine. So basically Joseph instructed Pharaoh that he should plant and save farm produce save the farm produce basically in granaries, so that when the 7 years of famine reach, there will be more food. So maybe this is the story of favor. How do we find favor? You see, Joseph basically found favor with Pharaoh. So basically, he became the most trusted man of the Pharaoh. So basically, in effect, he was the prime minister. So he was the one who was organizing the economy of Egypt. And how do we gain favor then? I think it's by doing good actions. I think there are people who, wherever they are, they gain favor with the Lord. So how do we gain favor with the Lord? I think it's about our ways, our manifest, and I think it's about finding favor. And I think if we are obedient, if we trust God, then trust me, if you have the favor of the Lord with you, then basically if you have the favor of God with you, then basically you will you will rise among men. And I think if you have favor, then you will rise wherever you are. And I think some people say it is better to find favor than to be talented. That is, it is better to find favor than to be talented. So I think the story of Joseph, far from interpreting the dreams, he was the right hand man of the Pharaoh, and this shows that basically Joseph had favor with the Lord. Remember, he wanted the Potiphar's wife had wanted Joseph to sleep with her, but if that had happened, Joseph would have been killed even. So basically, I think Joseph found favor with the Lord. So how do we find favor with the Lord? Maybe is what I'm thinking right now. So that has been the Bible study. How do we find favor with the Lord? As Joseph found favor with the Pharaoh, is by being obedient, by being nice. And I think if you have favor, then it is better than being talented. So that has been the Bible study for now. Then in Africa perspectives, I will be asking, why is Africa painted in bad light in the Western media? That is, why is Africa painted in bad light in the Western media, where Africa is shown as being a place away from just a common cold away from a disease pandemic, a spoonful away from starvation, and a civil war away, and a warlord away from civil war. So how does Africa have a good image abroad? Remember, today the perception is the new reality, and I think Hollywood, however much of its negatives exists solely to market America. Everyone around the world thinks America is painted in gold and honey. Everyone around the world thinks America is painted in gold. That there is manna that flows from heaven in America because of Hollywood. So that's how Hollywood has marketed America. But Africa, how do we market ourselves? Someone said that basically that is painting Africa, marketing Africa is like winking at someone in the dark. They'll never notice. That is, winking, marketing Africa is like winking at someone in the dark. They will never notice because the occasional good that comes out of Africa is eroded by the tons of negative stories about Africa. So Africa needs to tell its own narrative. And in today's world, remember that basically the storyteller is greater than the warrior. In today's world, the storyteller is greater than the warrior. So basically, the storyteller is greater than the warrior. And I think then that shows the importance of narratives. And if Africa is painted in such bad light, then that means we're only viewed as an aid and humanitarian hotspot, not as an investment destination. And I think Africa has opportunities. We have islands of success. So why don't we highlight these successes for Africa? And I think if we highlighted these successes, and then basically Africa would be good to go. And that is why, for instance, and that is why I presume that we need to be doing more to market Africa. Why is the story of Africa told in CNN Africa, BBC Africa, Al Jazeera Africa, and of course all the other stations? I think we need, this is a time to be really thinking about how we can grow Africa, how Africa can have a good image abroad. And I think if Africa has that good image abroad, then it will basically, if Africa has that good image abroad, then we will be able to attract investors. Not only that, then we will have Africans believing in their own stories. And I think American students in international tests, they come up last often in the developed countries, OECD countries. In the tests of students, American students routinely come out last in the academic assessment, but in terms of self-confidence, they come at first. That is because they have self-confidence. They have seen people do it. They have seen Bill Gates do it. They have seen Elon Musk do it. They have seen Larry Page, they are founding Google in a garage. They have seen Microsoft, Bill Gates doing it. They have seen Elon Musk doing it. So basically, you have Americans are very. They have seen Mark Zuckerberg launch Facebook from a college dorm room. So they have seen it because now they believe it can be done in America. But I think for us, then I think. For Africa, then we need to paint our own successful narratives, and I think if we paint our own successful narratives, and then Africa will be good to go. Africans will believe in themselves. Self-belief is what kills Africa. No one expects that Africa can do good, and if that happens, then they proclaim it that it is black excellence, and I don't think that augurs well. I think Africa has to tell its own narratives. It has to focus on the good stories that come out of Africa, and I think if that happens, then you can't expect that Africa will be in good stead. Africa will grow in great strides, and I think Africa will be that city on the hill that cannot be hidden. So, how do you think we can paint Africa in good light? And I think our media stations. Why should I learn about Nigeria from CNN, for instance? Why should I learn about Nigeria from CNN if I'm a Kenyan, for instance? Why can't I learn about that is Hollywood? Why can't I learn Hollywood from about Nigeria from an African station? And I think that's the challenge for African media houses. I think the private media, they're making some good money, especially the urban-based media. Why not send correspondents to these other African countries so that they can tell the African narrative. And I think if that happens, then the story of Africa will be told, and Africans will have a self-belief in themselves. Right now, it's not there. We see all these negative stories. That's why you heard about in 2019, about 20,000 Nigerians ran out of, ran away, went to seek greener pastures, I think, in Canada, because Canada has this merit-based immigration. So let me know on how you think Africa can improve its image in the Western media. And then in ideas, I'll be looking at how do we promote science journalism. That is, how do we promote science journalism? So basically, science journalism, I think there has never been a greater time when there have been so many scientific inventions, but at the same time, skepticism in science is getting so low. Why is science such a niche field while entertainment and celebrities are mainstream? Why isn't science top notch? I think in the 1600s you had science clubs. I think in places like Europe you had people coming out to explain science, but today it is celebrity that dominate our headlines. And I think you had in the European Union in the space program, you had a celebrity appearing on page one, displacing the launch of a space vehicle to the outer layers of the sun. So you can imagine how very much basically science journalism can take a back burner. It can be relegated to maybe in other news, maybe a small segment. And I think if Africa then, if we promote science journalism, then we can get our kids interested in science. And I think that's the way to do it, to get our kids interested in science. That's the way to be able to have our kids interested in science. And I think that's how we really can nurture the next generation of inventors, the next generation of innovators. I think that's how we can nurture them. And I think if science becomes mainstream, then we need page one stories to be about science. And I think if that happens, then you can be sure that a lot of inventions will be there. Inventions that solve our toughest challenges as humanity. Innovations that solve the deepest issues of the day in the world. And I think you have programs such as the Night Science Journalism Fellowship at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology at MIT. You have the Night Science Journalism Fellowship, which basically trains journalists to be able to cover science. To cover science in practical and good ways. But I think maybe we should be teaching. Maybe we should. The reason why success maybe is not so much for its pleasure. It's because everyone has an opinion about sex, from the great kindergarten dropout to the high-flying college professor. So everyone has an opinion about sex, and there's no greater reward for an editor than having people relating to a story, people basically giving their opinions about a story, even if they don't agree with it. And I think that should be the aim for science journalists. Maybe have some creative writing classes where basically we can have some creative writing classes where basically we can have an Africa. We can have basically where science can be promoted. So how do you think we can promote science journalism? And then finally, in the Making America, why is Biden struggling in the Biden battleground states? I think why is Joe Biden trailing Donald Trump in the battleground states? I think it has been said that Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump by a significant margins, and many are worried about the re-election of Biden, citing his age and of course his handling of the economy. A lot of Americans are feeling left out in the economy. I really think that Donald Trump comes out strong on managing the economy, and I think he used to host a series of rallies, a series of summits in the White House. That is Donald Trump, especially that is Donald Trump. He used to host a lot of Made in America summits. That is basically summits that is where he used to invite manufacturers. He was very keen on reviving manufacturing jobs, and I think that's how you had him holding this Made in America summits, because manufacturing jobs really disappeared, and this is why for Donald Trump then it was important that he brings back the manufacturing cottage industry kind of jobs back to the shores of America. So I think in the Rust Belt states, that's how Donald Trump won in 2016, and I think especially if you had the war in Israel-Hamas conflict, then you have Joe Biden caught between a rock and a hard place, of course, whether supporting Israel or and supporting Israel, or basically whether to support Israel or basically to support a Palestinian cause. So Joe Biden is in a rock and a hard place, but his handling of the economy is bad, and I think the economy is slipping by. And I think you had Bill Clinton say it's the economy is stupid, and I think for Joe Biden, then he really has to try hard and sell his agenda. Of course, some say that basically the economy has improved under Donald Trump. We have record low unemployment at about 4%. But then, of course, they say that basically his message, his campaign handlers are saying the positives about Joe Biden are not getting out, and maybe that is why they met with a group of TikTok creators. Because on TikTok you have this generation Z, these millennials believe that the economy is not doing well at all. So you let me know on why you think Joe Biden is trailing in terms of opinion polls in the key battleground states that are going to decide the election. So this has been it for now, where I have looked at our Bible verse and the story of Joseph and how do we find favor with the Lord. And then, of course, I looked at Africa perspectives. Why is Africa painted in bad light in the Western media? Then I looked how do we promote science journalism, and finally in the Making America, why is Joe Biden struggling in the key battleground states. So this is it for now. This has been Madibinda TV for now. This is home of Compassionate Conservatism, where I advocate for a fine balance as sweet spot between individual creative genius excellence as afforded by capitalism and society excellence as afforded by equality of opportunity. So in essence, we are calling for capitalism with a human face, that is capitalism with a human face.